Well, hey everybody, I'm Bill Keller, and I want to introduce you to this new series that I'm going to be doing here. Several weeks ago, Pastor Hal did a series from the pulpit talking about finance and talking about debt. And it was a really good series. If you haven't heard it, you can go back and hear it here on our channel. But after that, I taught a seminar at the church that is a debt elimination and wealth building seminar. And it talks specifically about how you can use your current income to get completely out of debt, including your mortgage. And so it was a 3.5 hour seminar that I taught at the church, and I recorded the whole thing. I've now broken it down into 4 episodes that I'm going to be putting here on our YouTube channel. And in the first 3 is the secular portion, just showing you how to work your finances and how to use your money a little bit differently to be able to get completely out of debt. And then the 4th one is about the biblical perspective and specifically what God says about debt. So I hope you get into this. I hope you enjoy this. And I really pray that it's going to be helpful for you and for your finances. So this is part 1 of our debt elimination seminar. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Bill Keller. I guess most of you know me. My wife is Elizabeth here. I want to welcome you to our debt elimination and wealth building seminar. You know, debt is pervasive in our society. Everybody has debt, and it's basically understood that debt is just a way of life, right? It's not only acceptable, it's expected that we're going to have debt. And we're taught that basically from childhood all the way through, especially through advertising. But there is a better way. You know, we are taught that we can live a better life by using credit to get the things that we want. But the reality is credit actually destroys our financial future, and you can live a better life if you don't ever use credit. So what we're going to talk about here is how to get out of debt, and then how to use the money that you're spending right now on debt payments to begin to invest for a solid future. And let me tell you just a little bit about how we got into this. For about the first 10 years or so of our marriage, we didn't have any credit cards. We didn't have any debt. We didn't believe in it. Somewhere along the line, we got our first little credit card, and that was the end, man. Next thing we knew, a few years later, we had more credit cards than I wanted to admit, and most of them were approaching the limit. And somebody introduced me to this information, to this seminar, and I have to say that it absolutely changed our life. I applied the principles that I'm going to teach you to our finances. Oh, I forgot to mention, this system will actually teach you how to get out of debt, completely out of debt, including your mortgage, in 7 years or less. If you take the average amount of American income and the average amount of debt and you plug it into this system, completely debt-free on average about 7 years. So generally it takes 2 to 3 years to get out of debt, of all of your consumer debt, your credit cards, your cars, all that kind of stuff, and then you work on your mortgage, and you can knock that off in 4 or 5 years. I was a contractor running a construction business with my parents, a family business that had been well established for 30 years. And the business went belly up overnight. In 2007, we built 9 houses. In 2008, we had 0. Just like that, it was gone. And we owned our home. We owned our home. The bank owned it. We also had 3 rental properties, and the rental properties were going to be our long-term retirement. But all 4 of the houses that we owned were mortgaged to the hilt. And the rental properties, the mortgages were being paid by the renters, which is a great deal if you can set that up, because you don't have to have additional money. The renter is buying the house for you. So we had those houses for a couple of years. Everything went well. And then the crash happened. My business disappeared. We couldn't pay our own mortgage. At the same time, all 3 of my renters ended up unemployed, and none of them could pay their rent. And it took me a couple of months to go through the process to have them evicted. And then it would be a couple months more probably for me to get another renter in there. And by then, 4 houses, no payments on them. There's no way we could catch up on any of them. So the bottom line is we ended up losing all 4 houses to foreclosure. So I found out firsthand what debt can do. because we had a good, solid-looking future as far as our investments and everything for the future, for our retirement. And overnight, it was all gone. And we got kicked out of that house. I was unemployed for quite a while, and we were just this far away from being totally homeless and living in our car because I had no income. She still had income, but it was only about 40% of what, I made like 60%, and she made 40% of our household income. So God very miraculously provided us 10,000. And yeah, it was an absolute miracle that this cash came in, and if I had another 45 minutes, I could tell you that story, but I don't. But with that money, we were able to find a piece of property. It was a tiny little piece of property, 50 feet by 100 feet, and it had an old ratty RV travel trailer sitting on it that was not livable. It was disgusting. And we were able to buy that thing, and we only had, from the money that God provided after closing and all that, we had, what, $200?
And we even tithed on it. It just got
Yeah.
so good. We had $100 left.
We had $100 left from the money that God provided. But the thing was still disgusting. And then through some more divine intervention, the Lord provided several thousand more so that I could renovate that little trailer. Our goal had been to tear the trailer down and put on a mobile home, but then we realized we didn't have the money to do that. So I renovated that little trailer, and I have pictures of it here. 32-foot travel trailer, 250 square feet. We moved into it after I renovated, and we lived in it for 5 years. So when we first started our YouTube channel, it was called, we were also preppers, so it was called Tiny House Prepper was the name of our channel. And we lived in that house for 5 years. Now, I was unemployed for a while, and then the only job I could find was as a truck driver. So I drove for 8 years with Swift over the road and 70 hours a week. But we immediately started applying. We continued to apply the principles that we learned here. And once our income increased, we could have gotten out of that little tiny house. We could have gone and rented something or whatever. But we decided to stay in that little house and save. So we were able to save for 5 years. And then when we moved down here to Virginia a year ago, we took all of the savings that we had saved, plus the money that we got from selling that little place, and we got a lot more for it because I had renovated it. And those two together, we were able to buy a house here with a very small mortgage. And now we're continuing to apply these principles, and we are paying huge payments on our mortgage, and we can do that because we have no other debt. No other debt. So we're doing like triple or more payments. And it looks like that we've been here just a year, and it looks like we're probably going to have that house paid off in January, hopefully. So we will once again be debt-free after just 1 year here, and in this house that's 900 square feet, 3 bedrooms, acre and a third, and we love it there. And yeah, and now we have room for my father because before we didn't in that little tiny house, and my dad is almost 90. He needed us. So that's what it has done for us. It has gotten us out of debt. It has, even though we lost all 4 of our houses, we are now 12 years later from the crash. Has it really been that long? Wow. We are now, within a couple months, we'll be debt-free again, and we own a home. When we lost the business, we lost all the houses, and I was about, 50, and I thought that retirement was not going to be possible for me. But anyway, so this has been amazing. So that's my story of how we got into it. And then I started teaching this seminar, actually, in Pennsylvania. We were in Assemblies of God, and I started teaching this seminar in Assemblies of God churches all over Pennsylvania, and I did that for a number of years. So, but when I did that, I had PowerPoint. Anyway. So the traditional debt model, the way most people think about debt, and this is where I really wish I had a graphic for you, but it's pretty much understood that debt is acceptable as long as you keep it under control, right? You got to keep your debt manageable. So people would come to me and they would be way too far in debt, and they would want to get out of debt. But okay, so they have a 30-year mortgage. They've been in the house 2 years, so they got 28 years left on the mortgage. So their idea would be that they want to get out of this excessive debt and bring it up to the point where it's manageable. And they're not talking about eliminating debt, they're just talking about making it manageable. And they figure that, 28 years later, the house will be paid for, and they'll be out of debt, and they'll be able to retire with no debt, no issues. But that's not what happens, because they still have the mentality that debt is okay. And several things happen. First, average American sells his house and buys a new one every 7.2 years. So that means every time they do it, basically they get another 30-year mortgage, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And also, because they're used to living with a certain amount of manageable debt, they never stop doing that, and they never get out of debt. And they never, when it's time to retire, they can't, because they still have too much debt to pay. They can't, they have debt payments that are just, anyway. So the system that I'm going to teach you, take the same 28 years left on the average mortgage, and you apply this system and you get out of debt, completely out of debt, not just get to the point of manageable debt. You get completely out of debt in 7 years. And then think about it for a minute. If you're making mortgage, or if you're making any kind of debt payments, add it all together and you had just mortgage payment, all of your credit card payments, car payments, maybe student loans, all of those kinds of things. How much are you paying every month on your debt? For most people, it's anywhere from $1,500 a month to $3,000 a month. If you were completely debt-free, right now you're already spending that money. So once you get debt-free, you don't then go hog wild and expand your standard of living. You keep spending that same money that you were spending on debt, but instead you invest it. And if you can invest several $1,000s a month, by the end of that 28-year mortgage, when normally the other way it would have just been paid off, instead you have a nest egg worth $1.2 million. And that's using the exact same paycheck that you're using right now, just using it in a different way, using it in a more efficient way to get out of debt as fast as you can, and then use the money that you were using for debt payments to invest instead. So that's just kind of an overview of the whole thing. And so we're going to spend the next couple hours talking about the details of how all of that works. So here's our system. First, get out of debt, completely out of debt, everything, including your mortgage. And then after you're out of debt, then you invest. You take the money that you were spending on debt payments and you invest. Now, this is not an investment course. I'm not here to tell you the best thing that you can do to invest your money. Other people are much better at that. I don't know much about that, to tell you the truth. What this is about is to help you free up the money that you need to be able to invest. Almost everybody knows they should be investing, and very few people have the money to do it. So if you can eliminate your debt payments, then you're going to have the money that you need to invest. Okay? Does that sound good? Okay. So what is the American dream? You hear a lot about the American dream, right? A secure job until you retire. My grandfather lived in Baltimore, and he worked at Bethlehem Steel as they call it up there. And he worked there for about 45 years, and then he retired with a nice pension, and by then he had his house paid for a long time ago. He was able to retire in a house that he owned with a good pension, and he was secure for the rest of his life. That just doesn't happen anymore. So a secure job until you retire, that's not really part of the American dream anymore. Own your own home. Everybody either owns their own home or they're renting and they want to own their own home. But do you really own your own home? The bank owns your own home. Find out, miss a couple of payments and find out who really owns it. And like I said a minute ago, the average American sells a house, and buys a new one every 7.2 years. And most of the time they upgrade. They get a bigger house. It costs more. I mean, that would be okay if you would take the equity from your house and buy another house of similar value, so you get a smaller mortgage and a 20-year mortgage instead of a 30-year mortgage. But nobody does that. They take the equity that they have, put it on a bigger down payment, so they can buy a bigger house, and they get another 30-year mortgage. Every 7 years, they move their 30-year mortgage along like this until you get to the end. You never own your house. In fact, only 2% of us own our homes outright. 2%. 98% of Americans have mortgages on their on their homes. My other grandfather got married in the 20s, and he was a very frugal person, and he had saved a lot of money, and he had $6,000, which was a lot in the 20s. He was able to buy a home for $6,000. He had the cash to buy it. But he didn't have any furniture. And so he made the choice to hold back $500, get a $500 mortgage, and he put $5,500 down, got a $500 mortgage so he could completely furnish the house. A couple years later, the crash happened, the 29, where they went into the Great Depression. He ended up losing that house because of less than $500 that he couldn't pay back. And so if the bank owns any part of your home, you're in danger. Because you never know what, a lot of people are worried about losing their job or downsizing or this or that or the other thing. I wasn't worried about that. I owned my own business. I was good to go. I had no idea that the economy would crash and my business would disappear overnight. You just don't know. Retire comfortably, an American dream, be able to do things like visit the kids, have a summer home by the lake or down by the beach, something like that. These are all things that we think about, the American dream. What is the true definition of financial freedom? In order to do a lot of these things, you have to have financial freedom. The true meaning of financial freedom is that you are financially dependent on no one. You're not dependent on a job. You're not dependent on the government. You're not depending on anyone else. You're only dependent on your own resources. And that happens when you get completely debt-free and you build enough of a nest egg in your investments that you can rely on that and you don't have to depend on a job. And you go to work because you want to, not because you have to. And if you don't want to, you can quit that job and just live off your investments until you find a job that you like and you work because you want to, not because you have to. So how would you define financial freedom? If you had if money wasn't an issue and you weren't forced to work a 60-hour-a-week job that you didn't like or whatever, what kind of things would you do? How would you spend your money or your time, or what kinds of things would you invest in? Any thoughts? Yeah. Absolutely, more money into your church, yeah. That's a biggie that I'm going to be talking about in a minute, yeah. Any other thoughts? I love to travel. Yeah, we do that too. We love to travel. In fact, we have a job where we, with YouTube, where we end up traveling quite a bit, and that's actually job related, but we love it. And I was in the Army for 24 years, and we've lived all over the world in different places. We were in Germany for 3 years, and so we love to travel. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, are these things possible right now? And would they be if you were completely debt free? Yes, they would. Absolutely. Now, I did this seminar, like I told you, quite a while ago, and some of these numbers I have updated for this. Some of them I couldn't find the numbers to update. So some of these numbers I'm going to give you right now are a little bit old, but the principles still stand, okay? When I did this, the average income was $47,000, a household income, $47,000. Now the average household income is about $65,000. So we want to raise these numbers a little bit. But out of every 100 people who reach age 65, first of all, 25 are dead, 25 don't make it. So, okay. And then 20%, I'm going to move these numbers up a little bit. 20% have incomes under $16,000. And that's bare subsistence. You have to have government, assisted housing and all kinds of stuff. 51% have incomes between 16 and 45,000. Now just remember, the average income is 65,000, and if you still got debt and you try to retire on 45,000, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be able to pay your debts. Only 4% of people at 65 have retirement income of over $45,000. That's where you want to be. But only 4% of Americans reach that. So basically, whatever we're doing as a society, it's failing for 96% of us. And that's why you see, sometimes very old people that should have been retired a long time ago, working as greeters at, at certain big stores, and things like that. I knew a man who was well into his 70s and still doing construction work. He should have retired a long time ago, but he couldn't.
Telling you, it worked.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yep. We're better off financially right now than we've ever been in our entire life. And 12 years ago, I was despairing of retiring because we had lost everything. And that's because of what this system has done. So, okay, so I gave you some paperwork here. Look at it's probably the top one. It says Table 1, monthly savings required to reach the financial goals. You see that? Okay. So if you look on the left-hand side, if your annual income goal is $50,000, where I have it in yellow there, in order to do that, you have to have a nest egg of $834,000. And then let's say you have 25 years to retire. If you were 40 and you wanted to retire at 65, then you have 25 years. So you go over and you see 25 years, you have to invest $1,331 a month. Very few people can do that when they're full of debt. You can look at this chart and see how many years left until you want to retire and what you want your retirement income to be. And then that'll tell you how much you need to invest every month in order to reach that goal.
When you say invest, you talking about putting in a 401k or saving up for an IRA?
Well,
Or you talking about like playing the market?
well, like I said earlier, I'm not really talking about the best way to invest. I'm just showing you how to get the money to be able to invest, and then there are many other people. Real estate, 401k, stocks, there are many different ways to invest. And that's not what this is about, and I don't have much expertise in that area.
When you use the term invest, it could be
I will explain a lot of that as we go along. But basically, there are many different investments out there where you can take some cash and invest it into something and get an average return of 10%. Financial planners can help you with that more than I can. So once I free up the money so that you have the money to do that, then you can, look for the expertise to help you know how to do that. But this assumes that you're getting an average of 10%. And the stock market goes up and down and up and down, but over the past 100 years, it's averaged about 10% return. So does this give you an idea of how much you need to invest on a monthly basis in order to reach your goal? So how's it going with that? Let me ask you something. If you were completely out of debt, would you be able to do that? So that's the goal, okay? Get yourself completely out of debt first, then you start investing this amount, and you can reach your goal. And it works because you are investing so much more than you could when you're full of, when you have loaded down with debt. So, did you know that you are already a millionaire? If you earn $25,000 a year for 40 years of your working life, that's $1 million. When I first heard that, I thought, 25,000, I make a lot more than that. But then I started thinking, what was I, 45 years ago, 42 years ago when I first started working. My first paycheck, I joined the Army, my first annual paycheck was about $7,000. And I remember we were in Germany, and we'd been married for a couple of years when my income hit $10,000 a year, and that was amazing. So when I look back over my life, I realized, I probably averaged about $25,000 a year. So I've made it over $1 million in my life. So the question is not so much how much you make, it's how much you keep. So where does it all go? Well, first of all, 30% to 50% goes to taxes. And I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about that. But then beyond that, 20% goes to the home mortgage interest, not the principal, just the interest. 20% of your lifetime earnings is going to go to interest on your home. Another 10% goes to other interests that you're paying on credit cards and different things like that. So that's 30% right there that you're wasting on interest. That leaves only 20 to 33% for you to actually live on. That means $8,200 a year, $687 a month, $159 a week to live on. after you pay all of your debts and your taxes and everything else. It's no wonder all of us are using credit to, to live on. And when you get to the point where you're using credit card to buy your groceries, and I've known people that are in that situation, it can be really desperate. So what we want to do is eliminate that debt so that you can use the interest to live on and to invest. Is it making sense? Okay. Okay, did everybody bring a list of your debts? Only you are going to see them. No one else will see them. So you have a piece of paper called Calculating Your Debt Payoff Priority. Now what I want you to do is write in the first 3 columns: the name of the debt, the total of the balance, and the monthly payment. And the interest is really, believe it or not, irrelevant for this. So just go ahead and write that in, and then total up columns 2 and 3 when you're done. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. When I'm talking debts, I'm talking about things that can be paid off, not monthly expenses. Utilities, insurance, cell phone, all of that kind of stuff is an ongoing monthly expense. You can never pay them off. So just things that can be paid off and then disappear. Now what we're doing right now is just going to give you a very rough estimate of how quickly you can get out of debt, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll look at more detail, and we'll give you a plan that you'll know the exact month when you'll be able to be debt free. I just wanted to tell you a little story while we're waiting here. Go ahead and keep doing what you're doing, but she just reminded me of this. When we were doing this seminar before, one of the first ones, of course, that we did was in our own church before I started going to other churches. And a couple years later, there was a guy that came up to me who told me that he had been in the seminar, which of course I didn't remember because we had a pretty large group. But he was so excited because he had had a lot of debt. He had had his home, and he had had a second house as a rental property. And he said that he was completely out of debt, including his home and his second mortgage. His second house was all completely paid for in just a couple of years. It blew my mind how fast he did it. And he was so excited it completely revolutionized his life. The interesting thing is the more debt you have, the faster you get out of debt. And that doesn't make sense until you... What we're going to do is what's called a roll-up system. You pay off one debt, you take that payment, add it to the next. So the more debt you have, you get to the end and you're paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, into debt because you're rolling it up. So when he got his first house paid for, he was able to take all of that and apply it to his second house, and he got out of debt very, very quickly. Okay, are we all pretty much done here? Okay, so we got this going now. Let me turn this on. Okay, so you've got the first 3 columns done and the balances. We're not going to do the other columns yet, but we're going to go down below and look down below. So you want to look at B, below, my accelerator margin. Now, if you talk to a financial planner and you're doing it the conventional way, one of the things they're going to tell you is that you need to start saving. You pay yourself first, they say. Pay yourself first. 10% of your income, you should pay yourself first into investments. Well, I agree with them, but when you pay yourself first, you don't apply it to investments. You apply it first to debt payoff. And I'll show you later why that's important. So that amount that you're going to use to accelerate your payments is called your accelerator margin. And so I want you to write in that number 10% of your gross monthly income. Now, I know the first question is, where in the world am I going to get an additional 10% in my income? It's not possible. Don't worry about that at this point. I will show you where you can come up with that money, okay? What I want you to do right now is just write in that 10% of your income, just so you can see what's possible if you work the system the way we're talking about. And then I'll show you where to get that money later. Yes, monthly, gross monthly, yes. Of course, these are all, you can fudge the numbers or change them however you want to when you actually start applying it, but Yeah, start with the gross. Okay, so you got your accelerator margin figured out. Now, then what you're going to do is you're going to fill in C, your total accelerator margin, and it is the balance of column 3 plus B, your accelerator. Does that make sense? So that is, well, if you look at your monthly payment column 3, that is the amount that you're paying right now. Then if you look at C, the monthly accelerated payment amount, that's the new amount that you're going to be paying on your debts every month. Okay. So now we want to take a rough estimate, like I said, of how quickly you can get out of debt. So you're going to look at, go ahead to the next slide, Cole. When will I be debt free? And you have one of these that I passed out to you. And over on the left hand side, like I said, this is a very rough estimate. You just pick the closest number. Your total amount of debt on the left, and then you go over until you find the closest number to C, your total accelerated amount. And then you just go up and it to the top, and it'll tell you how many years it'll take. What kind of numbers are getting? How long is it going to be for you to be debt free? 4 years? Wow. 4 years? That's amazing. It's usually 7 is the average. 8, okay?
That's still good.
That's still right there within the average, yeah. So 4 years, 8 years. Could you have imagined that before you walked in here, that you could be out of debt that fast? Okay. Then you're debt free, right? Okay. You ready to go? Then you're debt free. Then you can start investing your money. So go to the next one, Cole. Wealth Building Financial Freedom Calculator. I think I gave you that too. So this will show you how much you will be worth if you invest. There it is. So the monthly investment amount on the left is your accelerated debt payoff from letter C on that first form, because that's how much you were paying on your debts. Now that you're debt free, you continue to spend that same amount. So you find the closest number that you can on the left, and then you go over and you say whether you got 5 years left or 20 years left till you retire, whatever, and that'll tell you what your net worth will be. Well, even though you're already retired, you're better off no matter what, getting out of debt and investing. So, yeah. Right. So, what do you think? Do you like the results? Yeah. Before you walked in here, did you ever think that kind of thing would be possible? Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to go back to the calculating your debt payoff, and we will finish that column, and we will work out a plan for you so that you will know exactly to the month when you'll be able to be completely debt-free. Okay? So we got coffee and different things back there. Just like a 10-minute break. We don't want to take too long because we don't want to go into the afternoon. So that is the conclusion of part 1 of the seminar. And basically it has just given you a very quick, rough estimate of how soon you can be out of debt. Now, if you had trouble reading the numbers on those charts in the seminar here, don't worry, because in part 2, tomorrow, we will look at a lot more detail, and you will be able to know exactly to the month when you will be debt-free. So I hope you will continue on and look at part 2 tomorrow.